Now, are there ways to actually go to college and not get into debt? The answer is yes. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 ways to actually do this. However, though, this is very controversial because what you're going to have to do is what most people are not willing to do. And by the way, I also have another controversial idea. A lot of people watch these videos or watch videos about college and all this stuff and loans and debt. And a lot of people feel resentment for their parents because their parents did not save up any money for their college tuition. Neither did my mom. But my point is, I don't really believe in the idea that your parents should be working an extra 5 to 10 years just to save up for your college degree, because most of the time kids, well, they care about their parents' money, but they also want to do their own thing. They want to go to the college they want to go to, they want to go in the major they want to go into, and they don't really care about their parents' opinion as far as everything else. It's just like, hey, give me the money and then let me do what I want. And I don't think life is supposed to be that way, okay? So when I think about college, I'm not a big fan of the whole college dream. I'm not a big fan of, I've always had a dream to be a psychologist or a veterinarian, and it's my life goal and life mission. I don't believe in those things. I think objectively, college is a very good institution in a way, and if you take advantage of it, you can walk away with a good trade, so you can basically get a good job. But I would not go into college saying my dream is to do this. No, I want to do something I enjoy and I like. But if that same thing I want to do, hey, I have a dream. I've always wanted to be a doctor. How much is it going to cost you? $250,000. On top of that, 8 years of your life. Well, you know what? Maybe I'm going to reconsider that dream and look into something else, okay? That's the way I look at college. It's not about parties. It's not about what you think and what I've always wanted to do. I think that whole idea is like a Hollywood mindset when it comes to something that's very objective, which is basically you want to get a degree because the trade you actually want to do requires it, and you want to get the degree without getting into a bunch of debt. That is the idea. And I'm very happy if I can do that without having to take money from my parents. But if they have extra money that they actually want to offer, then guess what? Their opinion also matters. I always see those videos about basically, I want my kids to go to a state school. They want to go out of state and pay like 30 grand a year, right? It's crazy stuff, okay? So I don't like that idea. I'm very objective when it comes to college. Is college for everyone? The answer is no. I also like trade school. I had a friend. He went to college with me. I graduated with $23,000 in student loan debt. I think it was like 20K, but 10K of that was start a business, while he graduated with $80,000 in debt, and he never actually got to use his business management degree for anything. And you don't really want to do that, okay? That's the idea. Now, here are the ways to actually go to college for no debt and to save a lot of money, because it's not going to be free. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you time in some way. But there are a lot of things you can actually do, okay? And by the way, if you don't know me, my name is TommyBryson. Now, the very first thing, guys, is going to be this. There's something called the Run and Start program. And I actually participated in this program when I was in high school, but I had no idea that's what it was actually called. So I do want to clarify something. The Run and Start program is almost like a dual enrollment type program where you're able to, instead of being in high school taking certain classes, you can take those classes in a college that your high school is partnered with, and you're actually able to earn college credits while you're also in high school. And one of the main benefits is that while you're basically taking those college classes in college, you're not having to pay for them usually, because it's being paid for via the partnership that that college has with your high school. Why would they do this? Well, more than often, those same high school students end up actually going to those colleges. That's just a theory, but it sounds pretty accurate. On top of that, there are some disadvantages. Like people say, well, you're going to finish college earlier, and that's not a good thing, because college is a lot more than just getting credits. It's about finding out who you are and what you like and all this nonsense. Again, I think that's just a little stupid and dumb. College is about actually going there. If you don't know what you want, get those general education credits, and while you're doing that, you're actually trying to figure things out. But don't think that being able to get ahead of something that you need to do is a bad idea because you get to graduate early. It is not about experiences alone. It is not about having fun and all this other stuff. All of those things are good and legitimate. The main priority is to actually save as much money as possible and get your trade and be able to start working
as fast as you possibly can. So yes, the Run and Start program, the dual enrollment program, there are a few names for this type of stuff, but overall, it's you being able to go to a college to take those classes that you would be taking basically in high school, take them in college, and be able to earn college credits for them. Okay? Yeah. So back to the video.
Now, you might say, Tommy, well, how many credits did you earn? Well, each class is usually about 3 credits. And you might say, well, you only earned 6 credits, right? That's not that much of a big deal. Well, the college I ended up going to, which was basically a private school, private college, actually, credits cost around $700, okay? Each credit. So every class was about, for example, $2,100. So by me having 2 classes already checked and 6 credits, I basically saved $4,200, which is actually a big deal. Now you might ask me, Tommy, you lived in New York. If you went to a CUNY school, a state school, it would have only cost you around $210, right? So why did you go to a private school? The truth is this, okay? I got rejected from every single dream school I actually wanted to get into. I applied to Lehman, I applied to Baruch, I applied to some other colleges out there, but my dream school was Baruch, by the way. But I knew one thing. I knew I could get into community college, okay? And that was basically Bronx Community College, and it was very close to my house. But my counselor told me, and also I had a prejudice against community college, and I was like, there's no way I'm gonna go to community college. I'd rather just go to a private school. And the private school offered me a $25,000 scholarship, and I had student aid, and I was like, I'm just gonna go there, I'm gonna get my grades up, and then apply to Baruch. And guess what? Eventually, I applied to Baruch, got rejected again, applied again, got accepted, but by that point, I was like, I'm not really gonna go over there. But the smart thing would have been, I'm gonna go to community college because I got accepted there, okay? And I could actually work there, well, more of that later because we're gonna get to that point, okay? But that's what I recommend. Find a program if you're in high school, or a program if you're not in high school, that allows you to take college credits or college classes for free, and then that way you're able to get credits, save a lot of time, and also a lot of money. So when I went to college, I didn't have to take those classes, and to me, that was awesome. Number 2 is going to be take AP classes and also CLEP exams. Now, I didn't know what CLEP exams were, but I did know what AP classes were, okay? So when I actually was in high school, I took an AP class, and that was my only AP class, and that was a Spanish class, okay? And once you actually get an AP class, depending on what you actually do, you can actually earn college credits. So when you actually go to college, you can actually transfer those credits over. However, there is something called a CLEP exam. They cost around $95 to $100. The test takes around 90 minutes to 120 minutes, but it's basically a way to take a test and basically say, I'm qualified, so this way I don't have to take that class when I go to college, okay? Which basically means you don't have to take it, don't gotta pay for it, you got the credits for it, and that's awesome. And by the way, I do have to mention that when I was actually in high school, I took the Regents exam, which by the way, in New York, you have to take a Regents exam. It's like a state test to actually make sure you can actually say, hey, I can actually graduate or whatever. But the point was, I took an algebra test, and as long as I got a grade above 80, I was actually able to qualify, so that when I went to college, I wouldn't have to take a math class, and that also basically saved me on college credits. So finding out what you actually need to qualify so you actually don't have to take those classes in college can save you a lot of money. Now, if you're thinking, Tommy, well, if I take, for example, 3 classes, right, or 4 CLEP classes, okay, exams, well, that's a lot of work, and also like $400 or $500, right? It's a lot of money. The answer is you're going to save a ton of money, okay? Just by going in there and taking those exams, and they take work because it's like a 90 to 120 minutes, and you have to study and prepare because you're basically saying, hey, I'm qualified, here is the proof, right? So guess what? It still is going to be massive savings because even at the state level, if you're paying like $200 per credit, that's $600. Well, 600 versus 100 is basically 6 times less money, okay? Well, or 6 times more expensive if you go to college, okay? And it also saves you a bunch of time, right? Now, number 3, guys, is going to be going to community college for 2 years and entering a 4-year school after you've basically gotten all the general education courses completed. This is what I'm talking about, my friends, okay? So what I should have done initially was, when I got rejected by all the colleges, and by the way, it wasn't because of my grades. I was like top 3 in my high school, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure I was like top 3 as far as my graduating class. However, my ACT scores were basically horrific. And the reason was, I was basically in a public high school in the Bronx, and all the information and the whole classes were about the Regents exams and not about preparing us for the ACT classes, okay? So you needed to do that on your own, and I had no motivation to do that on my own, okay? So I literally went into the ACT exams without any preparation. I remember being there, I was like, yo, this stuff's gonna be long, and I have not studied. It's just going to be a wreck. And it was a wreck because you need to prepare for those things. So, and I didn't, and that's why. So what I should have done was, when I got rejected, I should have just gone to Bronx Community College, which is a community college, okay? And the credits were like around $210 per credit, which is actually pretty cheap for people that actually live in state. And I could have basically acquired all those general education courses that you actually need to take for around like 2 years when you're even in a 4-year school, to then start taking the credits and the classes that you actually need for your actual major. So I graduated, for example, as an accountant, right? I have a degree in like accounting, a bachelor's degree. But those first 2 years really had nothing to do with accounting. They were all general education classes like ethics and this and that nonsense or whatever, okay? So if I actually went to community college, I could have basically earned those credits for a fraction of the price, got my grades up, and then when I applied to a college, they would have basically considered me based on my GPA and not based on, for example, my ACT scores anymore, okay? So that is the idea, okay? I could have saved so much money. Now, on average, you're going to take around like 40, you're going to need around like 40 to 60 general education credits in a way to actually have that qualify. So imagine going into a 4-year school where now you don't have to pay for for like 40 to 60 credits, okay? So let's say, again, let's use that example. I was paying $700 per credit. Now, let's say I went to community college and got those 40 credits, or $700, I'm sorry. $700, so not 7,000, $700. Whoa, what's going on here? $700 and multiplied by 40 credits, that would have been around $28,000, okay? That is a lot of money, my friends, okay? Instead of paying this much, I could have said, well, it's $210 at community college, and I need 40 credits. That's going to be $8,400. It's a big, massive difference. So yes, consider going to community college. Don't think that if you go to community college, you're never going to finish anything and then you're just going to give up along the way. No, you're there on a mission and you know exactly what you're doing. And those people that actually start community college and they don't finish it and just never go into anything, that's their business. That doesn't have to be you, okay? So I do regret listening to my counselor on that. And I do regret having like a bias against community college, saying that's where the people go that get rejected from everywhere. That's where I should have gone, because I got rejected from everywhere too, okay? But that's the idea. I highly recommend that. Now, number 4, guys, is going to be you want to pay less for credits. And the only way to do that is to basically shop around for colleges. A lot of the times, we pick a college that we actually like, we fell in love with, but the overall idea is don't fall in love with something that's provided by everybody else. It's like a product, okay? If I go to Walmart and I need a pillow and the pillow is $10 and I go to Target and it's $4, I don't care about Walmart. I care about the pillow. That's the idea, okay? So don't care about the college. Care about the major overall and how much you're going to be paying for it. Now, sometimes you could get away with going to a fancy Ivy League college and paying less money than you would in a state school. Why? How is that possible? Aren't they the more expensive? The answer is because you have to consider everything they're actually offering you. So for example, if I'm going to a private school and they're going to offer me a $25,000 scholarship, and I have, for example, a lot of money in grants, a lot of money, for example, in more scholarships I basically got, once I run the numbers, it might be cheaper for me to go to an expensive private school than it is for me to go, for example, a state school. That's the idea. So you actually want to shop around for credits. And here's one recommendation. When I was in college, I applied for a scholarship. My teacher told me, Tommy, you should apply for the scholarship. They give it out, this and that. I said, okay, I'm going to apply. resentfully, I think I said that. And then like a month later, or like I don't even know how long later, they sent me a check for like $10,000. I was like, is this like a real check? And I was like, yeah, it's a real check. $10,000 deposited, and that's money I did not have to pay towards college. So that's going to be massive. So if I could go back, I would definitely grab like 4 hours or like 6 hours, as long as I possibly can, and apply for at least like 200 to 300 scholarships. There are so many institutions out there willing and giving away a lot of money towards people that are in college, so you should apply. That 10 minutes basically made me $10,000, and you spending hours and hours and hours and getting free money is going to be great. Because usually when you're in college, your time is cheap because you don't really have any skills to actually earn a lot of money overall. Now, number 5, guys, is going to be this. It's getting work study. When I was in college, I also did work study. I think work study is great. The tough part about working when you're in college is that you have basically a college schedule if you're a full-time student. So not everyone wants to basically hire you. Saturdays and Sundays, usually you're going to be free. And then you might have some days where you're not even going to class or whatever. And not every employer is trying to deal with that. That's why a lot of college students have jobs, for example, as being like a waiter, a bartender, potentially a valet parker or whatever, because those are jobs that are kind of more flexible. But work study is a job you can get within the college if they actually offer it, and you get paid usually minimum wage, not more than that, and they work around your class schedule. So let's say, I remember I would come into class, and then during the break time I would be at work, and then after class I would be at work, and so on. But you do have to know, right? One thing is, if you need the cash, you can do this. But you really should consider if you can get someone to hire you for minimum pay to do what you do as a major. That would be even more beneficial because you don't really learn much from work study. I worked in the financial aid sector. It wasn't that great. I worked in the security sector or the maintenance sector. It wasn't that great either. Most people that work study, at least in the college I went to, it was more like something you just did to get some money, and everyone knew that. So you had responsibilities, but it wasn't like a real job, if you know what I mean. And there's also a cap on how much you can actually earn. But the overall idea, guys, is if you want to go to college and you don't want to get into debt to actually do it, you have to shop around, compare prices, look around your major, consider switching also. And also, when you're in college, also work, have a job. I hear people say this all the time, like, I'm in college, I can't work. A lot of folks are in college, they work, and they have children, okay? And I'm not saying like, well, that's them, right? So that doesn't have to be you, right? But I'm saying you should look at people and their lives and their sacrifices and be able to say, hey, I can also do that too. So if you're able to work part-time and you're able to earn like $2,000 a month, and you're paying, for example, per semester like $7,000, something like that, or like $6,000. I don't even know how much, maybe $2,100, depending too. And you're able to cover that with your own cash and the scholarships you actually get. That's going to be better, and you are going to thank yourself in the future for that. Okay, so that's it, guys. Those are 5 ways to actually help you when it comes to not getting into debt when you go to college. All right. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified.